Awesome.
Thanks, Aaron.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. We'll go ahead and get going right on time. Thank you, Steve, for making that happen. We're good. All right. Thanks, everybody. Good afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get started. I have hopefully some exciting stuff to share with you. So I see a lot of familiar faces, a lot that I don't. Just as a quick introduction, my name is David Mack. I'm with the Data Governance and Discovery team. And let's talk about a little bit what I'm going to go through today. So I did the introduction, so spoiler alert, that's already been finished. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about an initiative that we're doing, some of the stuff that we're doing in data governance, and some of the things that we're trying to accomplish, and an exciting new partnership that we have with OneTrust. And we're going to talk a little bit about the efforts that we're doing on that side to make it happen. And then I'll go over some of the higher functionalities of OneTrust as we're implementing it. So it's not fully baked out, but we'll give you a little sneak peek, and we'll go into a little bit of a demo of the system so you can get a feel for what to expect in the future. And finally, we'll open it up to any kind of questions that we have. All right, so if hopefully some of y'all attended Jennifer's session this morning to kind of get an idea of what we do with data governance and why we're important. So this whole conference is about all this really cool stuff that you can do with data, the reporting, the integrations, and all of this insights that you get from that data. But in order to do that, we got to get a couple things squared away first, right? We have to know some basic information about this data before we can use it to its fullest effect and safely. So one key thing that we want to know is what data do we have, right? So we have all sorts of data. Georgia Tech is a huge institute. We have a lot of different research areas, and we have athletics, right? We have athletics data and student data and finance and HR. So we have data kind of squirreled away all over the place. So the first thing we want to know is what data it is that we have. And then the next question on top of that is, where is that data, right? So where have we squirreled it away? Who has this access to this data? Who has a social security number sitting in their database that maybe they shouldn't have, right? Well, these are important questions that we want to know. And then on top of that, we want to know the applications that are holding the data. So it's important to know all the applications. We've identified already hundreds of different applications. So everybody's got their own flavor and their own thing that they need. Every department has their own business purposes. And of course, naturally, we buy some sort of software product or some sort of application that we need to use this and manage it. But do we even know what that is, right? So do we know what this department over here is doing and what this department over here? So part of the things that we want to do in governance is understand where those applications are and what those are and what data they hold. And then we want to understand why we are using the data, right? So this is an important part of regulation, and as privacy grows more and more important, right, is it okay that we have a student's social security number and their address? In some cases, yes, right? So we need those things to do financial aid and some different course registrations and things like that. So that's okay, but we also need to know why we have that information. And then on top of all of that, so to make sure that all of this is governed and overseen correctly, we need to have an idea of the people that are overseeing this data, right? So we need to start putting some names to applications and names to particular data as we try to govern all of the data that we have here on campus. So it's a pretty tall order. We have a lot of things that we're trying to do. This is a big, if you've been here at Tech a lot, you know we have a lot of different silos, a lot of different departments do things differently. So we're trying to break down some of those and get it a little bit more mapped out and manageable. So in order to do that, we have implemented a partnership with OneTrust. Now I actually have a surprise guest here that I'm going to put on the spot. So Ryan is with OneTrust, so he's going to give you a hello and just a quick introduction about what they do over there.
Yeah, thanks, David. Hey, everyone. My name is Ryan Edge. I lead up our product strategy team at OneTrust, and really excited to be partnering with David and the team on this. OneTrust is a company founded by a tech grad, and we employ a lot of tech grads, including myself. So we were founded back in 2016, and we are everything that David described. We think of ourselves as a privacy and data governance technology platform. So a software that helps organizations use data responsibly. So if you think about how you collect data, how you store that data, how you share that data, and ultimately, hopefully, dispose of that data when it's ready to be disposed of across that entire data lifecycle. We help organizations make sure they do that in a way that's compliant with regulations, that's in line with what, when it's personal data, the people whose data that is expect, right? So David touched on, why do we have data? That's something that is super unique about personal data and privacy. So data management is a huge category. We really focus on that data governance aspect, and especially when it is personal data, just making sure that that's done for the right purpose and sort of help with that whole life cycle. So yeah, that's what we do. We've been working with David and Zach and the team on implementing this, and yeah, looking forward to the future on it.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. All right. So what are we going to use? So OneTrust has a lot of different things that they do, but more specifically, right, these are the things that we in the data governance and here at Georgia Tech are looking to do with the software. So we want this as our inventory of applications and we'll store those as data assets, an inventory of the data that is being held inside of those particular applications. Our inventory of processing activities. So this is important. This is what Ryan was saying and said, what are we doing with this data? We want to start recording that so we understand what that is. And then start to build out our data dictionary, right? And start to build out that dictionary so we have common understanding of our terms and where that information is located. So we can start using OneTrust to help create that map and build that out. And then on top of that is our glossary of key business terms. So this is those enrolled student, right? So what is enrolled student? Enrolled student may mean something to GTRI. It may mean something completely different to the registrar's office, right? So, right, Mark will attest to that. So when we're pulling up a report and you go to see these cool light reports that have been built and it says, well, here's this thing. And then you say, well, what is that thing? So we want to help start building that out and building those definitions. So we'll be using for that too. So let's dig in a little bit and, should take a step. So what else does this do? So those are our core objectives, but what else does this help us do, right? So this implementation and this work that we're doing is going to help us meet compliance requirements, which is a yawn fest, right? So, but it's important. We are under a lot of different regulations. Our main one is from the University System of Georgia. So they have under our business process manual, specifically section 12, it lays out all of the things that we need to do as an institute to govern our data. So that covers some of the cyber stuff, the stuff we're doing, and some privacy. So this will help to meet some of those. On top of that, it's industry best practice. It's probably not a surprise that us not knowing what applications are here on campus is bad past practice. So, but it goes a lot more than that. This is setting this up for a lot of different regulations that are coming. I don't know if you're familiar with like GDPR, which is big over in the European Union, but those things just are a precursor to the different regulations that are coming our way as well. Those continue to get more and more. We typically don't get less regulation, we typically get more. So this gets us in a better spot so we can meet those changing demands. This is going to help provide insights for cybersecurity, right? So this is complementary to some of the work that cyber is doing on their side. So we will partner with them. This is going to also be a complement to the work that the data services team is doing, right? So they're doing something similar when they're trying to find out where that data is. They get to do the cool, exciting stuff of building out the reports and doing that, but we're going to help them identify data. And then again, start putting those people with that. So if they need to get access to a data, do we have the right people that are signing off on this? We also partnership with our records management and our privacy teams. You'll hear privacy a lot throughout this thing. So under the Office of General Counsel, we work with that privacy team to make sure that we understand what those activities are going on. And it provides insight to everybody, right? So one of the reasons we went with OneTrust was because they allow us to open up this platform to really anybody. So we don't want to just have a map in our little area. We want to be able to open this up. So if you have a question about, hey, who do I need to contact about Workday? Well, we're going to put Nate's name on there. So you can go into the system and figure out who is that person. Or maybe you have a question about a particular term that's in the registrar's office, and you can contact Mark. We'll be able to put those things together and put those people and those terms together. All right. So we're broken down. We've gotten a couple different modules. The first one, and we'll dig in a little bit more when we do the demo, but just want to kind of give you a high level, is the data mapping module. So this allows us to build that inventory of business applications, right? So your Workdays, your banners, all of the systems that we have on campus. And then it allows us to put key information about that particular asset and allows us to track for that. We have a lot of requirements that we have to track for compliance purposes and requirements. So this allows us to do that. It allows us to grow as well. So we can build that list out. And if this year they need us to track X, next year they need Y, we'll be able to build that on top. And then importantly, it allows us to track the types of data that each application is going to have and each data domain that it touches. In addition, we're going back again to this privacy stuff that we're kind of beating on. We're going to build out that inventory of processing activities. What is a processing activity? It's any operation or set of operations that are performed on personal data. And this speaks directly to our annual ROPA. So that's our record of processing activity report that we have to submit to the university system. That is a term directly pulled from GDPR, right? So that's a thing that you'll probably hear more and more about as time goes on. But OneTrust allows us to track that and the different things that we are doing with the personal data that we have here on campus. Right. Another cool thing that OneTrust lets us do, so our data governance team right now is small, and that's okay, right? So we have to expand this out to all of campus. We want this to be usable and updatable by everybody. So OneTrust has a pretty powerful assessments tool that allows us to send out particular forms, I would say, about a particular asset that we have. That could be a processing activity, that could be Workday, right? So instead of just a form, though, it pulls the information that is existing and it allows us to send it to a person. And that way they can just review it or make changes or updates. And what this does is allows us to scale. It allows us to keep our information accurate and up to date, because typically as soon as you gather information, it's stale, right? It's typically how that goes. So part of our process that we're doing will be sending out regular updates sent out to the different owners as people that are named, so they can go and verify that everything is still correct. Right. One thing that is kind of behind the scenes is the data discovery module. So this speaks to some of the work that's done on the back end, on behind the scenes that you won't particularly see, but it helps us to build that map. So we are partnering with data services on this. In essence, this allows worker nodes to sit on particular databases that we're looking for and scan these systems, right? So what are we looking for? We're looking for those patterns that are for really personal identifiable information at first, but we can also continue that to expand it beyond that. So OneTrust uses, we're having some issues?
Apparently, yes. Screen sharing has stopped. Sorry, everybody.
That's fine. This is when Ryan gets up and does a dance.
The worm.
Yeah.
Hurt my back earlier, sorry.
We were sharing.
Sharing is caring.
If Gabe's, I'll try to verify. Oh, come on. There we go.
You sharing again?
I hope so. I will be back in a couple of minutes. Okay, so I don't get my phone.
Should I continue, Steve?
Go ahead.
Okay, we'll continue on. I don't want to run out of time. I know we have other stuff going on too. All right, so using the AI, right? So we had to throw that in there because AI is the buzzword of the week in probably every conference you've been to for the last year. But we do utilize that. It helps us to scan and look for, again, for patterns. The key thing too, which we need to keep in mind, we don't hold the data. OneTrust does not hold the data. The whole OneTrust is looking for those patterns, right? So it's looking for email addresses, first name, last name, home addresses, social security numbers, and things like GTID, right? So we'll start building those out. It just helps us to map and identify and know what kind of data is out there and where it lives. In addition, with this partnership that we're doing with data services, this helps them too, because they're on the same mission, right? So their mission is to start gathering more and more data so they can, again, turn it around and feed their EDW and build out better reports, better things, and make those feed into all of the decision making that I'm sure that we will be talking about all week long. All right, so with this information, we go back to what I kind of briefly talked about with our, did it go? Did not. There we go. Okay, so would feed into our data dictionary and our glossary of terms. So this is, we're good. Awesome. Thanks, Steve. So start building this out, start knowing our different names, where they are, start tying it all together, and then start to define those particular terms as well. All right. So if everything is working correctly, which I'm going to go that it is, I'm going to switch over to our UAT environment. So keep that in mind that this is UAT and we are implementing. So if you see a Mickey Mouse in here, just disregard. All right, so what we talked about first, which was our data mapping automation. Oh, I'm not sharing. How do I?
Full screen sharing.
It is.
Should be up.
It is, but it's not showing on the. Let's. Maybe I need to go out of my PowerPoint presentation.
Yes.
Here we go. All right, we got it. Okay, so here is the OneTrust data mapping automation, just to kind of give you a feel for what we're looking to do here. All right, so if we go into our assets and I can make this any smaller. We're going to go roll with it. All right, so here we have our list of applications. Typically, this is much easier to read, but it's down here. So let's look at Banner just to kind of get a feel. We always pick on Banner because Mark's here in the room for one, and then also it's what we do here, right? It's students, so we always want to pick that out. So we have some of these key informations that we are starting to track about this particular application. So we have our name, right? We have different, also known as, we have our purpose and things like who's the vendor and is this third party, just some general information, right? We have a specific list that we have to track, but we also are working with other departments to start to track the things that are important to everybody else too. So we start to grow those out. We have our data domains, right? So we talked about what information is there. Did anyone know the shortcut for making this? There we go. That better? A little bit. All right, there we go. Okay, so we have our data domains listed here that we can start pulling that information. So we have that register of the different different data domains that this application is using. And then we have things like our categorization, right? Does Banner hold PII? Yes, right? So we can start to identify those systems that are really important, or not important, but the ones that are critical to privacy and critical to some of the things that we want to protect. We can start listing out what regulations, right? So Banner falls under FERPA, but we also will be able to pull other regulations that we want to track. Hosting location, right? So where is the data hosted? This is really important as we're moving into more of a global privacy world. If it's hosted in the European Union, that data is subject to GDPR, right? So we need to know that information because it defines and helps to guide us to which regulations and things over it. And then we start pulling the people. I am not the application owner for Banner, but in this I am. But this is where we start putting those names that we can start sending those assessments to and start identifying who to go to for the correct answer. And these are tied directly, again, to our roles as data governance as we pull them in. Some other information that we pull. So we can also start building the larger map around different related assets. So we have this list of all of our business applications that we use on campus, but we also want to start understanding the relationships and who talks to who and who does that. So we know, like for this, we know that Slate talks to Banner, so we can start building those maps together as we know. And then on top of that, we can start recording our processing activity. So what are all the processing activities that Banner uses? So we'll just go ahead and view all of them. Here's just a sampling of what. So we have like course registration, grades, financial aid, admissions. These are all things that we want to know that Banner is doing. We want to be able to track that. So let's go and look at one of these processing activities. And we'll look at course registration. All right, so we have another inventory here. These are all connected, but this one's a separate one. But it allows us to start tracking those things that we need to do about that particular processing activity. It gives us things like our description that we can say, because these are things that we have to report on. So we want to know that Banner is using course registration for this purpose, right? So we want to be able to flesh that out. We can also start to put process owners, right? So this is where we start looking at our data domain owners, the people that are over the data. So we can start assigning these things to a particular person so they could be that expert. It creates that source of truth, right? So that who do we go to if we need a particular information on a particular process. And then we can also see the reverse, right? So as we're starting to build this map out of things that we have on campus, we know that Banner does course registration, but we also have another application that we've identified that uses course registration as well. And this one, for example, is Canvas. Again, the idea is that this map will be available to everybody, so everybody can get a better understanding of the things that we have here on campus. Okay, so let's look at the data catalog. And this is where we will start to build our business glossary terms and our data dictionary specifically. All right, so I have pulled, let me make sure this is right. So, all right, so here's just a sampling of stuff. I've just done a quick search here for information that belong to a particular data domain. So our core person domain. So we have a couple things down here. We have our business terms and we have our key data elements. And we have ones that are kind of out of the box that we know about, our socials and our phone numbers and things that are common across really all applications. But then we can also start to build our own and start to build classifiers around that. And I will say I kind of skipped over that. So I skipped over the sausage making part, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes. So we are using OneTrust to identify that, hey, this is what a GTID is. And actually, let me pull it up and kind of show. So we have things like our example, like what is GTID? We have our definition, a unique 9-digit number. We have our examples. We can start building out our different values that we're using, right? So, and this would work as well for work tags, right? So if we were wanting to know what systems are using grant numbers across the world, we can start to do that and identify those particular patterns and find it. Those are going to come back in, and we start to build out this glossary. We again have this different information here. And again, very importantly, we start putting the names to the terms, right? So who is actually in charge of GTID, right? So if there's a question about that, if there's some sort of collaboration that two departments are doing together and it comes down, we need to know, well, what's the answer about GTID? Well, we know Zach here is listed as that owner, so we know that we can go to him and do that. We also have a mechanism in OneTrust for people to suggest terms and whatnot, and then we can also build out our workflows around that. So you can see they kind of come in as proposed, and then we have our own review process as well that would be ultimately signed off on by that data steward. All right, so pulling it back down, some different things that we can do with this. So we can start identifying things like, this is personal information. This is our classification level where we have, this is sensitive information. And we can start, again, tying it back to those business domains and those data domains. And this helps us with our reporting and helps us, again, to identify the information that is really critical to know and protect. All right, so one more thing I'm going to show you in here before we open up to questions is how it all ties back, right? So we have our term, we have our application. We've also done a lot of that mapping behind the scenes. So if we go here and we looked at our data asset, this is where it's really tying that physical database to the business. We will have a sense of down to the table level of where this information is located. So our example here, and we just pulled this one from the data lake. We'll be able to see the direct column here. We can find out information about the content and build our own framework around that. Right, so this will also help us as we progress and we move into things like DSAR reports. We ask, right now that's a completely manual process. So if somebody needs to know what personal information we have on them, that is somebody picks up the phone and calls Banner. Someone picks up the phone. So this starts as we start to build this map and understand the data that we have. This helps to build some foundations as we go on. And then all the way back, right? So it all circles back to that inventory asset. So when we go to look at Banner and we say, well, yes, it does have social security number, we'll also be able to point out where in the system that it does. So, all right, that is, I'm trying to go back here. And oh, this is what you get. Well, this is the only slide that we have. So what questions do you have? Anything that you'd like to know? Yes, sir.
So I remember you saying that OneTrust doesn't actually hold the data.
Right.
So is it giving us just, you have the 9-digit GTID, for example, is just giving us the actual terms, or is it giving us data with those terms?
It is scanning for terms, right? So it's actually going to go and what we're doing is setting a very low scan profile. So it's going to look in your database and we're going to say, hey, we'll just go look at 50 rows, right? Look at 50 rows. If you see a pattern that says, this is what you said, this one looks like a GTID, it will return it back into the system. We or a data steward would verify that that was correct. And once that is done, then there's nothing retained. Yes.
How much of this is pre-populated? For example, here are the common PII examples. And how much of this is something that we need to configure data point by data?
Yes. So a lot of the PII is like we know basically what the PII is. It's anything that is identifiable, right? So anything that can directly identify you as a person. So we have that list. So those are there, but we don't want to stop there. So we have a lot of work to do on our side. Like we started with GTID because we know that that's big, but we'll continue to grow that list out as we mature. Yes, sir.
Is there a plan of integrating other sources like, for example, cybersecurity data, firewall data, things like that?
Absolutely.
Tracked through the same system?
Yes. Sorry. So the question is basically working with cybersecurity with some of the stuff that they are doing. So we do have partnerships with them. So they are primarily using ServiceNow as their system for risk management, and that's fine. OneTrust does some of the stuff, but we've worked with them, and we cover, but we don't track the same thing. So we have started that partnership. So the answer is yes, right? So we ideally see some API connections directly with ServiceNow and some of the things that are going on, so we can start sharing what information we have, and they can start sharing what they have.
Online question. When do you plan to be fully implemented?
I knew this one was coming. So we're hoping by January, right, to have this out and going. Again, with that caveat that we will start with what we have, right? So this will be a continuous process as we will go on. We're hoping to have our top, I think, 35 apps fully vetted and fully in there. And so that should come January is when we're shooting that for, 1st of January. I didn't say what year of January. Yeah. We'll leave that open. Any other questions? Any questions from the chat? Yes.
So a lot of the labs in the institute and some of the departments hold their own data and then generate different data that might have connection to other administrative data, other detectable. Is there a time plan of potentially integrating that or at least tracking that with the current system, or is it currently out of the scope of the current implementation?
So the question for the good of the group is talking about lab data or really any data. I will say that our effort is focused on non-research data, right? So we're looking at the administrative side of research, but we're not looking at that. We intend to partner with GTRI when it comes up to that to start building those connections as well. But right now our scope is limited just to Georgia Tech specific government data.
I appreciate seeing this question. For Benedict, this is for Benedict, for example,
Yeah.
It makes it to lots of places around campus. Will there be a mapping, and you said that I was running around, but mapping back to the original system?
Yes.
To see where it came from originally?
Yes.
So you'll know what piece of data came from here to these 10 places.
What we'll do, and we haven't.
If you can repeat that.
That's fine. So I got the question about mapping, if we'll understand where that source data came from and moved. So if we find a pocket of data, where that is. So yes, we don't have that process fully fleshed out yet. So part of what we want to do is identify our sources of truth, right? So for example, our GTID is banners, right? Banner owns that. You're going to find GTID in probably every system on campus, and it's probably going to have 10 different names, right? So that's part of the effort that we're doing, is to identify that and start to standardize it. So taller, yes, in the back.
Question, when you get the data that's related to like user ID, so your user ID, your name, and then a number at .gov.edu, your login, also your email. With the institute recycling email addresses, will that impact those data long term?
Potentially. So the question about recycling data, if we're reusing similar data over and over again, will that affect what we're doing? So initially, no, it won't, because again, we're not looking for Nate's email address. We're looking for email address, right? We want to know, or you want to add something?
Oh, I can. I mean, there's a couple questions like this, right? So to David's point, when we're scanning the data, we're looking for patterns, essentially, whether that's through just simple pattern matching or like AI analysis. So, to your question around, is the data being stored in OneTrust? We're not actually looking at, the only reason we look at an actual email address or an actual GTID or anything like that is just to identify the pattern. And that's done like on y'all's infrastructure, so it's never going into our system. Once that's confirmed, we're just saying, we know that there's an email address here. So recycling email addresses wouldn't really matter because you're basically just saying, oh, there's an email address here. Where it might come into play is with the DSARs, then you could.
Yeah, if we get into that, but if we got into the DSAR, if I'm not mistaken, then we would input someone's particular email address, for example. We would know that information, and the search would go for that. So, question? What else you got? Anything else? Mark, you got one or no?
I was going to ask how often we're contacting various social units
So,
for verification.
The question was how often we will be contacting the functional units. For Mark, that is daily. And we haven't finalized that process. Probably, depending on what it is, it's probably going to look like an annual review is what we'll have. But we'll do that. But we also want to build in mechanisms for the opposite, right? So if you know that something is changing, if Mark wins the lottery and no longer is on banner, bye, see ya, he'll be able to go into the system and start that request and say, hey, well, Steve Goki is now in charge of everything. So he will be listed on that application. All right. Well, I am here for questions if you have them or anything else you want to talk about. I'd be glad to do that. As you've probably seen in the other sessions, if you have feedback, please use the QR code to provide your feedback. And then we just appreciate the partnership, right? So we're in the business of building relationships with everybody. So if you need us, we're available. Just give us a call. So, thanks, everybody.